You touched on injuries just momentarily there, Natalie. You mentioned obviously Igor Thiago. He will definitely miss the weekend's game. Looks like Rico Henry, Josh De Silva, maybe even Aaron Hickey could all be out as well. I mean, I've got it written down in front of me. They're all, from the outside looking in, big misses for Brentford.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Rico Henry, Aaron Hickey, so there are two fullbacks. And I mean, so we're having to kind of play Christopher Ayer as a left back, Mads Ruslev as right back, which is fine. They can do the job. But, Rico Henry down that left is just such a miss for us. And when he got injured last season, again, we just felt his loss massively. So I'm led to believe that he and Aaron Hickey won't be back until after the first international break, unless that's Thomas Frank just playing mind games, but I'm not sure it is, which we're all desperate for them to return just because you want to have your best players available. But like I said, with our injuries last season, when we lost a whole row of play. I mean, our whole back line was out at one stage. So, and then we lost, obviously, Ivan Toney was banned, but then with Brian Mburmo was injured, Kevin Schade as our left winger was injured as well. There were just a whole host of players who were out, and we just really struggled because we don't have that strength in depth at all. So yeah, I'm desperate for Rico Henry and Aaron Hickey to return, but I think you'll be safe. I think they won't make it for Anfield.
Well, yeah, I think looking at that, I mean, Christopher Ayer there, very good centre-half, by the way. I think he's very accomplished in that position. But if he's going to be left back up against an in-form Mohamed Salah, that feels like not a mismatch. That might be a little bit too far, but it does feel, it will sort of give Liverpool fans a bit of a hope and a sense of excitement at that one-on-one duel. I want to touch on transfers with you, actually. Not something we normally do on this show, but there's quite a link between us at the moment. Obviously, Fabio Carvalho just arrived at Brentford. I think you got a glimpse of him last weekend. The scene in front of the away support, and so the fans absolutely loving it. They were giving a great reception, all that sort of stuff. So, what's your expectations in and around him? And how do you think he's going to fare down there?
I think, well, obviously you never know. Every transfer's a gamble, isn't it? But, he is someone I suppose still has to get up to Premier League level. I wouldn't say he's quite there yet, only because he didn't really play that much for you guys. Obviously in the Premier League, he's been out on loan a few times since he signed for you. But we know he's a technically gifted player. We know he's a player that loves to find those little pockets of space and just create something. And, he's not necessarily blistering with his pace, but I think he likes those one-on-one challenges and tries to, skip past players. So I'm also intrigued to know where we'll end up playing him, because I know he sees himself as a number 10, but I think he was at times playing out on the left for you. So, I'd be intrigued to see how Thomas Frank is going to adopt him. I would like to see just someone to add that creativity to our forward line. We've got a great forward line at present with, Schade, Wissa and Mburmo currently. But to have somebody else in there just to mix it up and just to ping balls about, that would be quite useful. So I'd like to see that from him as well.
No, absolutely. I think you will get that from him as well. I'm delighted to see him get that move. He deserves more football than he would have got at Liverpool, because I think he touched upon this in an interview actually since the move. He basically said, I did well in pre-season, but I was also told that when Cody Gakpo and Luis Diaz come back, those opportunities are going to be few and far between. And that's not to say Carvalho is a bad player, because he isn't. He just wouldn't have got the minutes. He wouldn't have got the chances. And you said it there, very technically gifted, very intelligent, and got an eye for a goal and assist as well. He's shown that, albeit mostly in the Championship, but he's definitely shown that, and he could well bring that to the Premier League. Liverpool bought him for a reason. Let's put it that way initially. So yeah, I think you've done well. And also potentially in that, Sepp van den Berg could be on his way to you as well. Dutch centre-half. Looks like he could be going for around 20-25 million. For what it's worth, brilliant season last year at Mainz in the Bundesliga. Absolutely outstanding. Ahead of most defenders in that league in terms of metrics. But just for you guys, in terms of the player that he is, I mentioned there, centre-half, very commanding, very physically impressive these days as well. Is that the sort of player that you need? Are you happy to see you strengthening that bit of area in the pitch?
Yeah, well, we've got four centre halves. Obviously, I mentioned Ayers playing as a left back currently, so it's not necessarily a position I thought was pivotal. But then again, I say that we've got Ben Mee. He's obviously the latter part of his career. I don't want to even suggest that Ethan Pinnock is coming to the end of his career either. But again, these are players that are just a little bit older, and we just need a bit more cover, I suppose. I would have liked to have seen us gone for a left back because, as I mentioned, missing Rico Henry. Yeah. Brought in Sergio Reguilon from Tottenham last season, who took a bit of time to get used to us, but once he got going, he was brilliant. But Yeah, I mean, listen, I believe in what they're doing at Brentford. They know what they're doing. So it's just funny that you've become a feeder club for us, isn't it?
Looks like that. How the tables turn. There used to be Southampton giving all the players to us, and now we're giving them to Brentford. Yeah, it's a funny old game, isn't it, as they say. I mentioned earlier on that Brentford have given me nightmares ahead of this fixture. However, checking last season's results, 4-1 and 3-0. Maybe they flattered Liverpool a little bit, who knows? They, to me, were relatively surprising because Brentford just seemed like, certainly under Jurgen Klopp, obviously we know it's slightly different now with Arne Slot, but it felt like you were just fighting fire with Brentford all the time, and you often got the better of us, it felt like, if not for the result, but certainly in games. How do you see this weekend going? It is, of course, at Anfield. It will, of course, be absolutely fever pitch in there. It always is. But do you give, I mean, you're always optimistic as a fan, as a football fan. What's the point otherwise? But genuinely, hand on heart, how do you think this is going to go?
Oh, gosh, I think it'll be tough if I'm brutally honest. I think that first home game for Arne Slot, I think, is just going to ramp up that atmosphere, like you've already mentioned. I think we'll be up for the challenge, don't get me wrong. And I think they'll definitely want to try and scupper you in whatever way we can. But like I mentioned, we've got our two fullbacks out. That's massively, that just makes everything a little bit more difficult for us. Even like not having Ivan Toney, he brings that physical presence to a forward line that we won't have because Kevin Schade is a bit bigger than Wissa and Mbeumo, but I don't think he's got that physicality that Ivan Toney brings. I'll be interested to see how Thomas Frank plays this one because he might have to change things around a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes to 5 at the back, as a lot of teams might do when they're going to Anfield. So yeah, how do I see it going? I'm just, like I say, I'm nervous because it's that first game at home for Arne Slot, and I just think everyone is just going to be doing what they can to carry that team through. Not that they need to be carried. If we can do what Ipswich did to you in the first half, in that first game, apart from the fact they didn't score, but if we can play a bit like that and cause you a few issues, then you never know. But like I said, we've just never really got anything out of our trips to Anfield. So as much as I don't want to sound pessimistic, I'm just not quite sure we'll get anything out of it.
No, I think that's a fair assessment, to be honest with you, Nat. I mean, I'd love to sit here and sort of, I don't know, say that you've got more than a fighter's chance, but I do think you will put up a fight, as you said there. You always do. You don't die wondering, Brentford, more often than not. But I do think that the players that we've mentioned that are missing just make the task a little bit more straightforward for Liverpool, because you said that Ivan Toney's a real handful. Both your fullbacks being out when Mo Salah is looking so good at the start of the season, including pre-season. That's a recipe for disaster if you're a Brentford fan. It feels like, I say, the Anfield factor. It's a bit of a perfect storm for Liverpool's point of view. But I think in a more wider sense, Brentford will be perfectly fine this season, if that's worth any consolation to you whatsoever. But yeah, good. I'm glad about that. I didn't want to end on too sour a note after you were so kind to come on. Natalie, thank you so much for your time. It's massively appreciated. Everybody else, I'll see and speak to you all again very soon. Take it easy.